This is Face the State with CBS 21's Rob Hanrahan and featuring political insiders Mark Singal and Charlie Giroux.
Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Rob Hanrahan. Welcome to Face the State. I hope you're ready for a good program. I have with me this week Representative Frank Ryan from the 101st in Lebanon County. It's great to see you again, Frank. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's wonderful to see you again, as usual.
Love to have you here. We're going to talk in a few minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about walking sometime in this show because you're a man who's walked across the country and things in the past. But as far as fitness goes, I think it's a great exercise. Meantime, let's talk about getting our government in shape.
Absolutely.
I know, you ran for re-election. When I sit around with my friends and we talk politics, when I'm not here at work, the one thing that comes up that I bring up a lot, and you mentioned this before the program, so I bring it up. I feel like sometimes financially there's so much wrong with Pennsylvania that where do you start to fix it? And I know you've got sort of an action plan here to get us fiscally responsible. We
made a tremendous amount of progress in the first term on this financial rescue plan that I mentioned to you the last time I was on. Mm-hmm. And what that does, it says, let's, in a very organized way, start to go after the biggest issues in government. So we actually had 6 pieces of legislation become law last term, but I've got 3 key things that we're trying to get done right now. One is property tax elimination as a major component of it, and I think we're getting real close to having a bill introduced. The second one is lean government, L-E-A-N, and that's going to lean Six Sigma processes. The governor's got similar type package on that already. With some of the initiatives he got, so we're going to be formalizing that type of thing. And then I think one of the most important aspects is this Auditor General Fraud and Enforcement Act, which I've worked very closely with Gene DePasquale on to give an additional capability to the Auditor General. And that dovetails very nicely with the Office of Inspector General, and very importantly with the bill that we passed last session with Senator Bob Mensch's Performance Metrics Bill, that I think gives it a nice roundabout approach to start having a synchronous approach to getting government much more effective to what citizens need. And I think that's a key component of it.
Okay, now I've done a lot of homework before you came on the program.
Sure,
so I know exactly what you're talking about here, but bring it home to my viewers who are out there watching as far as property tax. Let's start with that. I know you're a big proponent of getting rid of property tax. Where do you pick up the slack on that?
What we have to do, and what my bill does, it creates a commission that's got 3 months. I was going to do it a 12-month commission. And the majority leader came back and said, look, we need to get this done quickly. We all know what needs to be done. Pretty much everybody wants to get rid of property taxes, but nobody knows how they want to fund it. Mm-hmm. So I've sat down and met with pretty much every conceivable special interest group and said, what do we need to do to pull this together? And I think we have a workable solution that no one is ecstatic about, but no one is trashing just yet, although give it a couple more weeks. But what it does, it's a combination of the PIT, EIT, sales tax expansion, and quite candidly a recognition that if property taxes go away for seniors 100%, and as you can tell by looking at me, I'm a senior.
You are.
Thank you for saying that. That if you take a look at saying that we will not tax Social Security, but if we're willing to take a look at taxing other forms of retirement income so that seniors win but not quite as much, we've got a way of pulling this all together. I met with some folks at the AARP and they've been fairly supportive of the effort. I have a senior working group of over 250 seniors, people 70 and older. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting close.
I didn't think so.
And what they've said is, you know what, if you're really going to get rid of property taxes, we can do it. The biggest problem I've run into, and I happen to be one of these skeptics, is they don't believe us. We don't want to get rid of property taxes and make a concession over here and then all of a sudden find out a week later the property taxes go in. And so we've addressed that issue. The other issue was local control. As an example, PASBO and Pennsylvania Association of School Board Officials and the PSEA, the Teachers Association, would like to retain as much local control as possible. And again, they haven't come out in support of it as yet or turned it down either, but we heard that loud and clear, and that's a valid concern. I wouldn't want money going to Harrisburg either. So we've tried to accommodate those things that were really important. We kept the exemption for most of the issues on sales tax. So while it would be an increase, it's not an expansion, with the exception of some very limited ways. So it doesn't go to food, daycare, medical services, professional services, or financial services. The things that
clothing?
Clothing, it could under certain limited exceptions, but that's not even necessary at this point. Because the Independent Fiscal Office, I sent them 4 different scenarios. They said, if I use these combinations of rates, what will happen? I've not introduced languages yet for a big reason. I want to go around to all the groups and say, what don't you like about this so I can accommodate the change? The minute I introduce it, and I have to make a change, it's got to be done as an amendment.
Right, right.
This way I can get it done before the language is done, and that's been helpful. I'm now on my 9th revision, and I tell you we're about 95% of the way there, and I'm pretty optimistic that if we're all willing to look at it carefully and realistically, I think we might have a solution this year.
Because you're finding that a lot of seniors, according to my research here, are one life event away.
Absolutely.
From losing their homes, actually, and a lot of that has to do with our property taxes.
We are within one life event, and let me give you an example.
And a life event can be
death of a spouse.
Death of a spouse.
A divorce. I mean, we hate to talk like that, but we have a lot of folks that retire and they realize that all of a sudden at the last minute, when they were working, they loved each other, but when they're stopped working and they're home every single day with each other, maybe it's not such a great thing. And so a death is probably the worst one. So if they're both on Social Security and the one spouse passes away, they're able to use the higher Social Security. But I have to tell you something, as a senior, we have to be very careful about what we do to younger people as well. The Independent Fiscal Office mentioned quite clearly that the vast majority of the problems that we have in the Commonwealth is that younger people are moving out of the state.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
And I'm worried about that because we can't always just put them on their back. The cost of daycare, I take care of my grandson 1 weekend out of every month. My son and daughter-in-law are reservists. My son's getting called to active duty. He's leaving shortly. And the daycare for them is $18,000 a year for one. My other daughter's daycare's accommodation about $35,000. When you look at that, that wasn't that way when I had kids. And we had 4 children, and it's something we have to realize. The cost of medical care. My employer, when I was working, paid 100% of medical care. That's just not happening now.
Right.
And so we have to recognize that we just can't throw this on the backs of younger people. The other thing I caution all seniors about, and I think this is the key to the issue, 18% of the Commonwealth's budget is made up to take care of seniors. And the other aspect that we have to look at, if we don't solve this problem now, with the exodus of younger people leaving the Commonwealth, about 280,000 younger people per year, that we are within 3 to 5 years of having to tax retirement income, and you'll still have property taxes simultaneously. The time to strike is right now, so we can do this for everybody's benefit. And I think we've got a lot of research that's been into it. We've listened to a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans alike. We've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of folks to make sure this works.
I got to ask you, I mean, do you feel encouraged by the fact that you don't have one faction that's like totally, this is awesome, and another faction saying, I hate this? You kind of write down that where they say compromise meets is where both sides walk away from an agreement saying, well, got some of what I wanted and some of what I didn't want.
The best I can possibly hope for is that everybody in the world will be neutral.
That would be the best case scenario.
Because if anybody wins on this where they're ecstatic about it, then at the same time, I guarantee you there's somebody on the other side that I've hurt. And that's irresponsible. I'll give you an example of something we have. Marcia Hahn, Representative Marcia Hahn, was sitting in a meeting. I had one of those gotcha moments. And I'm pretty thorough. I'm a CPA. I'm pretty thorough in what I do. And she said, what are you going to do about New York State where we don't have reciprocity? And I put my hands in my head and I went, oh no. And she said, what's wrong? I said, I completely overlooked, because we have reciprocity with all the surrounding states except New York. We have 3 school districts in Pennsylvania. If my bill passes, it's $3 million, not a big number. It's a big number, but it's not a big number in the grand scheme of $14 billion. Right. But if we don't make accommodation for those school districts that will lose the property taxes, they're going bankrupt. And I can't have one school district have that happen. So we've looked at everything. So we've made an amendment to the bill.
I was going to say,
we did. It's in there.
Address that and take care of it.
And I've introduced a resolution to encourage the Department of Revenue to do the reciprocity with New York. I've already talked to the minority leader of the House of Representatives in New York and asked him if he would do the same thing. He's been incredibly supportive.
Awesome. So. He's Representative Frank Ryan. He's a fiscal watchdog of sorts, a Republican.
Absolutely.
One of our representatives here in the 101st District. We'll be back with more. The CBS 21 political insiders are standing by. They have some questions for you. Got a great panel set up. So I hope you hang around.
I'm honored to.
You're watching Face the State right here on CBS 21. Back in a moment.
This is Face the State with CBS 21's Rob Hanrahan and featuring political insiders Mark Singal and Charlie Giroux.
Representative Frank Ryan, my guest on Face the State. We have Kevin Harley in for Charlie Giroux, who is on business right now. So Kevin, thanks for joining us. And of course, we have our Democratic strategist, Mark Single, here. Mark, I'll let you get started here with the Republicans.
Well, thank you, and I assume that's because you know that this man is my state representative.
That's right. That's what you just said.
And I love having you as a constituent.
Thank you. We've actually encountered each other socially and in a business sense several times in the Palmyra area.
Absolutely.
So I can say that his constituents think pretty highly of him.
Well, thank you very much. And I tell you what, I love the district. I'm a transplant. I'm not originally from Pennsylvania, and I love our community.
Yeah, you can tell that.
It's really tremendous.
I want to ask you about your the property tax, because as you know, this issue is not new. We've been trying to do this for 35 years. And it all depends upon people's attitude about taxes per se, because there will be a trade-off. What makes you think anybody is going to be willing to increase the personal income tax or the sales tax, regardless of how you present it?
One of the things I would tell people, and I think this is a really major issue, Mark, is that property taxes are a fixed expense, devoid of current economic issues. And the first major problem that we had was in 2008 and 2009 when we had the mortgage meltdown. And when that occurred, people all of a sudden, when they started losing either their overtime pay or one of the partners was laid off or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden, very quickly, they started losing their homes. And now most people that have gotten new mortgages have to escrow the payments because it became so severe. Anytime you don't pay your property tax bill, all of a sudden what would happen is the individual would find that that lien takes precedence over the mortgages. So the banks were then very willing to pull the trigger to protect their collateral. With escrowing the property taxes, that goes away a little bit, but it's still a very, very major issue. But the fixed nature of the property tax is critical. Let me tell you why I think the time is getting more and more ripe. In that interim period, from 2008 until now, 175,000 Pennsylvanians have lost their home due to property tax foreclosure. And I think we have to recognize that we're getting to be an older state, and that older state perspective, because we're so attractive to other states, whereas most states do tax all retirement income, we don't tax any, and we're a nice place. I mean, I love our community. We are in a neat community. No matter where you are in South Central Pennsylvania, it's tremendous. And as a result of that, I think people are realizing we need to have an expense that's variable, but at the same time, I have to recognize that the most fixed cost intensive business I've ever dealt with is a school district. So the plan that I've got and I've developed actually accommodates that and will actually provide a 9-month cash buffer, the way we've structured the property tax to come in, so that all of a sudden it's not as big of an issue. And in my bill, I've got a lender of last resort, such if there's a force majeure, say if there's a Hurricane Sandy type thing where people are not able to work for a couple months.
Not to interrupt you, but I want to get to it before I take too much of Kevin's time here. Do you have buy-in from your own leadership, and have you talked to anybody in the Wolf administration about this?
I've got buy-in from our leadership. I've not yet talked to members of the Wolf administration, and I'll tell you why. We have a citizens group that is, and they've met with the governor. I have not. As an example, there's some people that have better relationships with some of the groups than I do. And so as an example, Representative Aaron Coffer is handling one of the groups for me. And in the citizens group, Jim Rodkey, Dean Klopp, Ron Boltz have met with the governor, and we have some buy-in from that perspective. We recognize that some people can be lightning rods, and I realize that can be true of myself. The goal here, and I've said this across the board, I don't care whose name this bill is in, because a lot of great people went before me getting this done. And Jim Cox has done a phenomenal job, Ryan McKenzie. We've had tremendous help from a lot of other people. Brian Cutler has been a godsend in this thing. Representative Stan Saylor, Appropriations Chair, has been incredibly helpful. I've gotten great feedback from Seth Grove, who's not really a big supporter, but yet gave me some guidelines, and I'm hoping to be able to get Seth to come on board, because he's very insightful in what he does. I've met with a lot of the members of the Democratic caucus and said, this is helpful. We've got a lot of members of the Democratic caucus who buy in. Some folks in Philadelphia, not as much so. I've showed them how by doing it this way, this will actually help enhance the fact that they're underfunded under the current funding formula. My bill accommodates a little bit. It speeds that funding issue up. And I'm going to go back to what Rob said. If any one group wins on this and they're totally ecstatic for it, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
Representative, following up on some of your government reform, the lean idea that you have, applying private sector business principles to government, which we all know government is not quite the same as business. Can you just briefly describe how that would work in terms of somebody trying to get an application or a driver's license? Because I think people get frustrated with that. So if you're applying private sector metrics to the government, how does that work, just briefly?
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's a great question, because what happened, one of the biggest complaints and comments that I get across the board is that people would go in to get a driver's license renewed and they've got this extensive wait time. So we got the metrics back from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they said basically the wait times were not that long. So I went down to one of the motor vehicle departments and I saw how the wait times are calculated. And so the metric actually reinforced, I think, potentially negative behavior. The wait time didn't start, as an example, until you pulled the little receipt. And so each office was run a little bit differently. So we had people in Lebanon County going to other areas. So what Lean does is it requires you to do a process activity map. And that process activity map then creates an environment for you whereby you would develop how you would, as a customer, it's customer centric, how you would go through the system so we can find out where are there obstacles. And it ties in brilliantly with Senator Bob Mensch's bill, which is the performance metric system that the Independent Fiscal Office was designed to do. The purpose of Lean, though, and I emphasize this to everybody, is not to lay people off. And in fact, any organization that's ever done it will fail if that's their intent. The intent is to satisfy the customer more, the taxpayer, the citizen who needs help within the community, so that we can provide a greater quality of service. And we've seen in areas where I've done it in my private practice. I've done it for a hospital. I do have a book that we've written on it that explains how to do it for government. I've done it for municipalities. I've never done it for a state. But the governor has initiatives right now already on Lean, and he's got 2 departments that have done it. So I'm just calling it a little bit different. I don't care if we call it the name that the governor has, because I think it's pretty creative. But I want to institutionalize that in the state. And by doing that, we recognize our responsibility to take care of citizens. And by that, I mean all citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because it's okay. Well, I think you'll see a 20% improvement.
We are all essentially customers of our government.
We are.
I want you to look at what great shape this guy is in. I'm going to change the subject real quick, gentlemen. We'll be back with the Keystone after this. But Frank and I are brothers in a sense that we walk for health.
Absolutely.
Simple activity, first weekend in March right here. I hate to go off in the soapbox. The producer's in my ear right now. You've walked across the entire country.
I have.
And are you prepared to share with what you shared with me right before the news?
I am.
You're going to do it again.
I'm going to do it again. And I want to do it in 4 years. I want to get these key bills done. My passion in life, this going to the House of Representatives is a little bit of a distraction. I don't want the Commonwealth to go bankrupt, and I think I know how to do it. That's what I do for a living. I want to raise $50 to $100 million for children with disabilities. And so I'm getting back in shape.
One step at a time,
One
right?
step at a time. It was 2,806 miles the last time. This time it'll be about 3,100.
Wow, I wish I had the time to go with you. I would love to give it a try.
We got to get these
I
bills
urge
passed.
everybody out there who wants to get on any kind of health plan, try walking. It really works great. You guys probably both know that too.
But it's a big walk.
Hour a day, half hour a day, 15 minutes. If that's all you have, it makes all the difference in the world. We'll be right back with John Misick is here. We've got the Keystone Commentary coming up. We've got so much going on in government. Frank Ryan, thank you for being my guest this week on Face the State. The time goes by too fast. Best of luck on at the Capitol with your work on the government and the fiscal responsibility there. Back in a moment with more.
This is Face the State with CBS 21's Rob Hanrahan, and featuring political insiders Mark Singal and Charlie Giroux.
The Pennsylvania Capitol Star's John Misick joins us for the Keystone Commentary. John, good to see you once again.
Hello again.
Got a lot going on, gentlemen, on the world stage, on the national stage. We'll talk about Michael Cohen in a moment, but Mark, the optics just off the top here of the president leaving North Korea with essentially nothing. Just he said there's a time to walk away. This was the time to walk away. They shook hands, he and Kim Jong-un, and that was it.
Well, there's no denying that this is the second time that he's engaged this little dictator and come away empty-handed. And that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of time and effort and money that are supposed to go into these things, and you would think we would do our research a little bit better so that you walk away with something of tangible value. I will say this, however. I'm glad that he walked away from a bad deal. If we're giving away our sanctions and not getting anything for it, you're better to step away and leave the table. So I do give him credit for at least doing that.
John Misick, I throw this at you. Better optics coming out of North Korea than coming from the Russia summit?
I think it's both. It's awful as well. I mean, the president gave Kim Jong-un a pass on the death of the American Otto Warmbier.
True. Did he
So he
ever?
said he took him at his word that the North Korean government had nothing to do with it, or that Kim had nothing to do with it, which is nonsense, since he runs the country with an iron hand. I mean, look, Kim Jong-un ended up a winner here. The American flag and North Korean flag were displayed at equal stature. This dictator, as Mark correctly identifies him, was given legitimacy and credibility on the world stage, and the president walked away with nothing. I mean, typically these summits are locked in, Rob. You know exactly what's going to do and everything that's going to happen before you get off the plane.
Can I
That's the
just jump
beauty
in
of
here
it,
for a
Kevin
second?
Harlan.
You know, it is so funny. Whatever President Trump does, you're not going to like. Let's just face it. Although I will give Mark credit for giving the president a little bit of credit. But if you look back, since he engaged Kim, we haven't had any missiles testing. And this is a process. You don't have to have complete victories. Let's go back to Reykjavik, 1986. The liberal media was all over Ronald Reagan for walking away from the summit with Gorbachev. A couple years later, the Soviet Union collapsed. It was the beginning of the end because of the Star Wars, if you remember. So Trump didn't give in. He didn't loosen up the sanctions. That's good. But the fact of the matter is that he is talking. I know that's difficult for my liberal friends to recognize it because they can't give Trump any credit for anything. But that is a good, positive step.
How many American presidents do you remember letting dictators skate on the death of citizens?
Well, listen. Let's just wait to see. We do know that Donald Trump likes the art of the deal. I'm not sure that I would believe the dictator that he didn't have anything to do with it. But Trump is, I think, engaging him, building some trust with him.
Yeah, but I mean,
he's
looking at
the
American
long term.
lives to do that.
I think that President Trump has
This
been
is the
pretty
dictator that the president has said, I'll take his word over my national security people.
I think that the president and his administration has got a very aggressive and comprehensive strategy with North Korea and particularly with China. And you can't argue.
And one thing we know about the president, he's not going to give up that information. He's not one to say what he's going to do before he does it.
Ronald Reagan was
something he ran on.
right to walk away from Reykjavik. History shows that. He did the right thing. I just said that I think Trump was right to walk away from this deal because it was a lousy deal. It was no deal. But remember that Donald Trump has presented himself as the ultimate deal maker with the biggest brain and the best words. And he's a lousy deal maker. And he's dealing with our enemies as opposed to our allies. Why not secure relationships with the rest of the world like we had before he showed up and blew that all to hell?
Well, let me just
I'm
ask,
out of
are we
time. We'll
safer
continue
now
this on
than we
Facebook
were
Live.
before he engaged Kim? Yes or no?
Give me a quick plug for PA Capital Star.
You find the Pennsylvania Capital Star at www.pencapital-star.com.
Awesome. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We're back with the final word after this, but we're going to continue this conversation between Mark and Kevin on Facebook. So join us there at Face the State on Facebook. Back in a moment with more here on television. Facebook is where it's at, folks. Go to Face the State, check out the video. The conversation continued there. It was good. Thank you for joining us for Face the State this week. Representative Frank Ryan, my guest, I thank him for stopping by. I hope you like some of his ideas on how to save the Commonwealth some money and keep some money in our pockets as taxpayers, because that didn't happen to me on the federal level this year, that's for sure. Things changed drastically since last April. Thanks for watching Face the State. See you next week, same time, same place.